Hey, this is Julia Rebecca Myron, aka The Messy Meditator, and this is the Messy Meditator podcast, where I'll be getting into the topics of mindfulness, messiness, and life. So let's get into it. So let's talk about forgiveness. This is a big topic, and I think it's an important one because forgiveness can be really tough for a lot of us. Those of us who have endured abuses and mistreatments of all kinds, it can feel impossible to forgive. And you hear all kinds of spiritual leaders and thought leaders tout the power of forgiveness. And you even hear all kinds of perspectives like forgiveness is a gift to yourself. It doesn't have to do with the other person. And I think perhaps my favorite perspective from a spiritual or thought leader on forgiveness so far is from Nadia Bolz-Weber. And she talks about how forgiveness is a way of detaching ourselves from assholes. When someone harms us, if we don't forgive, we kind of stay stuck and attached to them in a way. And she also talks about how if we really stay stuck and attached, then we might even start to act like them and become them in certain ways. And I really appreciate that perspective. But here's the thing. No matter how many spiritual and thought leaders talk about the power of forgiveness, which I know is real at times, most trauma experts will not push forgiveness. I have spoken with and listened to a lot of trauma experts who will say, don't try to forgive. Don't make forgiveness a goal. Make healing the goal. And oftentimes forgiveness comes naturally when we heal, but some crimes are so heinous, it's okay to not forgive. And if we make forgiveness the goal, it can sometimes feel self-defeating if we don't achieve this forgiveness. And I know I felt a lot of shame for a lot of years because I couldn't forgive certain people. And I felt like there was something wrong with me, that I'm somehow a fucked up person because I can't forgive. And I had a trauma expert tell me, you don't need to forgive. And so I'm going to pass that on to you, dear listener. This is your permission slip. You don't have to forgive. Whether or not you forgive someone who did something fucked up to you does not determine whether or not you are a good person. Your ability to forgive or not forgive does not determine whether or not you are a spiritual person. In fact, sometimes there can be a lot more wisdom in not forgiving. And I will say this topic always ruffles feathers. Whenever I say you don't have to forgive, the spiritualists especially come out, because trying to make forgiveness a goal can be a form of spiritual bypassing. Just try to get to the good feeling, try to let go, cut the ties, whatever platitudes about forgiveness that circulate around. We can start to adopt those philosophies as a way of avoiding actually feeling the pain of what happened to us. And I've spoken before about, we don't have to torture ourselves by enduring pain, but it's also important to feel some of our pain so that we can move through it, because oftentimes the fastest way out is through. In fact, I might even argue that always the fastest way out is through. Because if we try to avoid it by forcing ourselves to forgive too quickly, then that feeling gets repressed, it haunts us, it manifests in all kinds of other unhealthy behaviors or illnesses or dis-ease of some sort. But if we can learn how to just feel the pain that we're trying to avoid, and it can get messy and ugly and maybe even agonizing at times, but if we can ride it out, what's on the other side is pretty profound. And our healing does not come from avoiding pain and rushing to forgive. Our healing comes from integrating that pain and allowing it to be there and knowing that that's just a part of our story. That scar is always going to be sore. Not all scars are going to feel that way, but some of them will. In the year 2001, I was washing a butter knife, and it was a nice butter knife, and I accidentally cut my thumb with it. And that thing left a scar that to this day, if I push on a certain part of that scar, it's still sore. So something that might seem like it's no big deal, a cut from a butter knife, might actually be the most painful scar that we have. Now, does that mean that there's something wrong with my body because that scar is still sore and when I touch it in certain places, I can feel it? Shouldn't it be numb? Shouldn't I not feel that by now? Does that mean I'm an unhealthy person? Does it mean that I'm not spiritual because I wasn't able to Joe Dispenza and Louise Hay my way out of the pain of that scar? And don't get me wrong, I appreciate those people and their work, but as part of a tapestry of many other types of healing. So no, the fact that this butter knife scar is still sore doesn't make me a fuck up. In fact, I think it means that my body did what it's supposed to do. My body had a very natural reaction to what happened. Feeling pain and anger and resentment for being hurt and or harmed by other people is an appropriate reaction. Now, if we do get stuck in the anger and resentment, that can have its own negative consequences. And so it can be important to work with skilled teachers and coaches who can help us navigate those difficult emotions, challenging emotions, unpleasant emotions, especially if there's trauma involved with them, which there often is, so that we can learn how to process those emotions in healthy ways and alchemize them in healthy, wise, and holistic ways. But avoiding those feelings and trying to force forgiveness on ourselves, I think is much worse. And I remember the first time I had that trauma expert tell me that I didn't need to forgive, that it was okay if I didn't forgive. It was such a huge relief, and it made so much sense. It makes sense that forcing forgiveness can be counterproductive and actually make us feel worse about ourselves. It makes sense that repressing our natural feelings around a situation has negative consequences. It makes sense to make healing the goal instead of forgiveness. And it makes sense that sometimes there will be certain people or situations that we will never be able to forgive, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of us. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with your best friend, with your sisters, brothers, uncles, cousins, whatever. Because the people who I have forgiven in my life, it came so naturally. I never tried to forgive them. It just happened. And some people, it took a really fucking long time. Others, it came, I won't say quickly, but more quickly. It took a few years instead of many years. And there are still people who I have yet to forgive because the pain is so deep and the damage is so great that while I'm trying to clean up the messes from what these abusive people have done to my life, and they're off just doing exactly what they've always done, that's hard to forgive. When you see them engaging in the same fucking behavior that they've been engaging in since the beginning. When you see people who take no accountability, that don't self-reflect, that gaslight the fuck out of you, and if given the opportunity, they will continue to do that, I don't have forgiveness for them yet, and I might not ever. And that's okay. I still definitely have a lot of healing work to do around all of that, but I'm not focused on forgiveness. I'm not trying to not forgive. I just don't give a shit. I don't think about forgiveness. And honestly, when I hear people talk about forgiveness, I fucking cringe. It really makes me roll my eyes. And it makes it hard for me to take someone seriously if they're pushing forgiveness. And don't get me wrong, if the Dalai Lama starts talking about forgiveness, I'm definitely going to listen to what he has to say. But I would also love to see him engaged in a conversation with some of these trauma experts, because I think that could be pretty profound. So, this is your permission slip. You don't have to forgive a damn thing, and you're still a good person. Just go live your life and try to be the best version of yourself that you can be in each moment. That's all any of us can do. And the best version of ourselves is going to look different in different moments. But go easy on yourself. You're doing just fine.